He slapped her, right there in the hospital room while she was fighting for her life and their unborn child was hanging by a thread. He raised his hand and struck her like she was nothing. For a moment, the room froze, machines blaring, nurses gasping. But that single act set off a chain reaction that not even he, with all his arrogance and money, could stop. But let's rewind. Because stories like this never start at the hospital. They start long before in the glossy pages of magazines, under the flash of cameras inside gilded ballrooms, where the truth is always hidden behind expensive suits and practiced smiles. 6 months earlier, the world thought Adrian Cole was perfect. He'd just landed on the cover of a business magazine hailed as the self-made millionaire everyone should admire. At the Plaza Hotel, under glittering chandeliers, he gave a speech about ambition, about love, about how meeting his wife, Clara, transformed him. People clapped, women dabbed at tears. Cameras captured the fairy tale couple. And Clara, she played her part. Midnight blue gown hand resting on her small but growing belly. To the world, it looked tender, proud. In reality, her hand trembled every time he touched her, as if her body already knew this child needed protecting from its own father. What the cameras didn't catch was Adrian's phone buzzing against her leg. 3 short vibrations, his code with his mistress. Clara had memorized them, collected them, stored them away with the rest of the evidence she'd been secretly gathering. See, Adrian didn't love Clara. He loved performance. He loved crowds worshiping his staged proposal in a helicopter at sunset. His fake donation to a children's hospital that was really just money laundered through shell companies. The paparazzi accidentally catching him carrying Clara through a rainstorm like some knight in shining armor. Never mind that he'd rehearsed the pose with a trainer and scheduled the photographers with GPS precision. Every grand gesture was manufactured, every smile calculated. And Clara knew. She knew from the start, though. At first, she convinced herself maybe, just maybe, it was real. By the time she realized it was all a script, she was already trapped. And then, she found out she was pregnant. She thought maybe fatherhood would soften him, maybe it would wake up some buried humanity. But Adrian had no humanity left. At a gala one night, drunk on whiskey and cocaine, he leaned down and hissed in her ear, "You're getting fat. After you deliver my heir, you're going under the knife. Or I'll take everything in the divorce." All the while he smiled for the cameras, squeezing her waist hard enough to leave bruises. Clara stayed silent, counting down the days until she could escape. But she wasn't powerless, because she carried a secret Adrian had never suspected. Her real last name wasn't Cole, it was Stone. She was the daughter of Richard Stone, a man whose name alone could freeze CEOs mid-sentence. People called him the Shadow King. He didn't just own companies, he owned the people who owned countries. And though Clara had hidden that truth, longing to be loved for herself, not her father's empire, her father had never once stopped watching. Every slap, every bruise, every cruel word Adrian thought he got away with was documented. Richard Stone had files thicker than encyclopedias filled with photos, recordings, financial trails. He was patient, waiting for the moment his daughter would finally say the word. That moment came at 2:47 a.m. Clara woke up in a pool of blood. Labor had started too soon. She staggered, terrified, calling Adrian. He was at his mistress's apartment, champagne glasses clinking in the background. When she whispered, "I'm bleeding," "The baby," he laughed. "Promise." Then he hung up. Somehow Clara made it to the lobby, collapsing into the arms of the doorman who, as fate would have it, was one of her father's undercover men. He didn't wait for an ambulance. He shoved her into his car and raced through red lights like the city was on fire. At the hospital, she flatlined twice. They pulled her back with electricity, and adrenaline cut her open, pulled out her baby girl. For a moment, both mother and child were gone. And then, against every odd, both came back. When Adrian finally stormed in hours later, shirt, half-buttoned hair staged to look messy, his phone angled just right to capture his worried husband performance. He didn't expect an empty room without cameras. He saw Clara unconscious, pale machines keeping her alive, and he snapped. "This is unbelievable," he growled. "You couldn't even die on schedule. Do you know what this does to my stock?" And then he did it. He slapped her across the face, hard. Her head hit the wall, monitors spiking blood trickling from her mouth. The staff gasped, and that's when the dam broke. Security rushed in. Nurses tackled him. Phones recorded everything. 7 angles. 18 witnesses. Adrian Cole, the perfect husband, caught beating his dying pregnant wife on camera. Within hours, the footage went viral. By dawn, his empire was collapsing. His accounts were frozen, his investors fled, his board voted him out. His mistresses were dragged out in handcuffs. And above it all, Richard Stone activated what he'd been waiting years to unleash Operation Total Annihilation. Adrian was arrested that same night, and when he screamed, "I own this city, I'll kill you all," the detective only shook his head and said, "Not anymore, you won't." The trial was like nothing the world had ever seen. Victims' families filled the benches. 47 photos lined the front row faces of women Adrian had seduced, exploited, or killed, each one a ghost waiting for justice. One by one, witnesses rose, the hospital doctor voice steady. She was dying and he struck her. That wasn't grief, that was sociopathy. His own mother. He killed his father. He poisoned me. He's not my son. He's a monster. And then Clara, bruised, pale, but unbroken. She looked Adrian in the eye and said, "You didn't marry me. You bought a prop. And when I stopped being useful, you tried to erase me. But you forgot I am a stone, and stones don't break. They crush." The jury deliberated less than 20 minutes. Guilty on every count: murder, fraud, assault, conspiracy. Sentenced to over 3,000 years. He collapsed, not from guilt, but from rage that his script had finally been torn to shreds. But here's the thing. The story didn't end in that courtroom. Because Adrian wasn't just a bad husband. He was part of a network, a secret society of rich men who believed they could kill, cheat, steal because money made them untouchable. And Richard Stone, once his daughter was safe, made it his mission to hunt them down one by one. Senators, judges, CEOs, names you'd recognize from headlines, suddenly in handcuffs, dragged from their mansions. Clara, meanwhile, recovered. She named her daughter Grace Elizabeth Stone Grace, because that's what saved her. Elizabeth, after her late mother. And she whispered to that baby, "You will never mistake bruises for love. You will never think silence is strength. You will grow up knowing that when men like your father try to hurt women like us, we fight back, and we win." Now, some people say Richard went too far, that he used his empire to destroy not just Adrian, but an entire class of men. Others say he didn't go far enough, that Adrian deserved a bullet, not a prison cell. But one thing no one can deny: the world saw what happens when power, real power, chooses to protect instead of destroy. So let me ask you this. What do you think? Should Adrian have rotted in prison, forgotten and powerless? Or should justice have been harsher? Have you ever seen someone hide behind money and influence to hurt others? And if you had Richard Stone's power for just one day, what would you do with it? Because at the end of the day, this isn't just Clara's story. It's a question for all of us about justice, love, and what kind of world we're willing to build.